Hello, everybody. We are back for our podcast. We're back with Miss Jenny, like I promised.
Hello.
And we are going to talk about a couple of subjects, hopefully, today. Homeschooling being one of them, and just the different things that we go through and some encouraging scriptures and everything. And I'm just going to let Miss Jenny go ahead and take over.
Okay. Well, homeschooling is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
And of course, when I started about 40 years ago, things were very, very different with homeschooling. In fact, I didn't even know about homeschooling. When I got saved, my oldest was about 2. So I did not want to put him in the public school. But private school was like, out of the budget.
Right.
So it wasn't until some missionary friends came along and explained to me about homeschooling. Oh, I'm interested in that. But I had no internet to, research and find out. It took a long time to get to it. So by the time Joshua was ready to go to school, I still didn't have it together.
Right.
We took him out at midpoint in the 3rd grade. And so when I handed the letter to the principal, to the principal's office, that I was taking him out there at Christmas break. I was there as a homeroom mother and helping with the Christmas party. He come and looked for me.
Uh-oh,
What
I
are you
bet.
doing? You can't do this. Yes, sir, I can, and I'm going to.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty scary time because there wasn't a lot of people homeschooling. In fact, we got a letter from the school district that said that we were in violation of the compulsory attendance law and that we better get him back in the schoolroom,
Oh, wow.
or there was going to be a problem. Well, thankfully, God had led us to a Christian satellite school out of
Right.
Illinois, and I contacted them, and they wrote a letter back to the school saying, look, this is their constitutional right. They can do this.
Right.
And they backed off, and they never bothered us again. Now, it was very awkward because at the time we were running from the superintendent of the school.
Oh, no.
So it was a very awkward time. And because there weren't a lot of people doing it, we kind of were it was very frowned upon. My family was against it. Even here in church, people thought we had lost our minds.
It was that fear of the unknown.
Yeah,
or something, I guess.
you're not qualified to do that. You don't have the
Right.
education to. You're going to make your kids awkward. They won't be socialized, and they're going to be like, they won't be able to know how to act around other people. And so it was tough because
Yeah.
people that I loved and I respected were not encouraging me, and we didn't have all the things that thankfully that other people have now with homeschooling, these co-ops and different groups that they can
Right.
get together. There was nothing like that. I knew no one that was doing homeschool, so I was kind of winging it by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
But God helped me, and we made it through. And I think if I could go back in time and talk to myself, I would tell myself, relax,
Yeah.
enjoy this. You don't have to be so rigid, because homeschooling is not just about teaching your kids, at 6-8
ABCs.
hours a day in the book.
Right.
It's a life thing. As the other 4 came along later on, I started incorporating other things like cooking, and we would watch Alton Brown on Good Eats because he always had a
Oh, yeah.
history lesson about the foods, and I thought that
Right.
was so good. So that would be part of their, things they would do. There was a program on called The Way of the Master with Kirk Cameron
Mhm.
that showed how to share the gospel, and it was
Right.
really good. And I made the kids watch that. And we would go bowling for PE, and go to the park and different things. And so I learned to relax a little bit, and because more people were doing it, and I felt
Yeah.
a little more at ease. But I learned so much teaching. I learned more academically teaching my own kids than I did when I was in school.
Yeah. And that's sad.
And which I think really helps
Sad
me.
but great at the same time.
Yes, which I think really helps me now because God's called me to write. I know some of those things that I need to
Right.
write properly.
Right.
So that was a really big help. But I also learned a lot about my kids. I
It
learned
builds a better relationship.
it
I
builds a
think,
better
sometimes.
relationship with your kids, and you learn each of their individually.
Right.
Like I had 5 kids and same mom, dad, but all very different,
Yeah.
learned different, and you learn your kids, and it creates a bond that it just it just goes on. I didn't want someone else raising my kids. God gave
Right.
those kids to me,
Exactly.
and
He entrusted you with them.
yeah, and I wanted to raise them. Now, my husband wasn't always like, well, you want to do it. He was, okay, go ahead and do it. I'll pay for it, but he didn't really want to get
You want
involved.
to get, yeah.
So if I could encourage dads out there,
Yeah.
you may not be a big part of it. You may just say, I'll pay for it, but encourage your wife because it's a sacrifice.
Exactly.
And it takes a lot of time. You don't just open the book, teach, and then close the book, and that's it. It's an all the time thing
All day.
on your mind.
Yeah.
You know, the planning of it and just everything that you have to do. So dads can and husbands can be a really big support and very important. And moms, it's worth every sacrifice.
Even on those days where you want to just pull your hair out.
Oh,
it,
yeah.
It definitely is.
There were many times I was looking for the line to resign. I don't want to do this. This is hard. I don't want to do this anymore.
That's it. Your teacher's quitting on you right now.
Yeah.
Go in the other room.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Somebody else do
Yeah.
this. But God wouldn't let me because I knew it was too important. And that maybe my kids didn't appreciate it at the time. I think someday they would. And out
Yeah.
of my 5 kids, the one there, I have 3 of them that have their own children, and 2 of them are homeschooling. So I got a next generation of homeschoolers,
Yeah.
which really tickles me that
Yeah.
that they would do that.
And they're
And-
doing great homeschooling. I mean, they're active in everything. I know them because we're kind of family. I know them because, they've come here and everything, and you can see what gets me is when you see the little in their
Yeah.
eye,
Mhm.
when they're like, oh, I got it. There
Mhm.
goes that light bulb,
Yeah.
and even with Josiah with his piano playing as
Mhm.
well. I mean, even, he does great,
Mhm.
but he had to learn how to count and everything and do all the math to go with that. And so
Mhm.
the teaching of the homeschool with the math and everything, that
Yeah.
helps as well.
One of the big things, I don't know about you, but one of the big things is people have said your kids are going to be socially awkward. They're not
Oh,
going to know
yeah.
how to act around people. I tell you, I would have put my kids up against any kids that's in public school.
Social.
My kids would go
Very
up and
outgoing.
they were very outgoing. They would talk to adults.
Right.
They would talk to other kids. And you find kids, and this is not the kids' fault, but in public school, the kids that are raised in that environment, they have a hard time communicating with adults.
Yeah. And
Maybe-
sometimes they're more socially awkward.
Mhm.
I went to public school. And so, but my daughters, when they started doing homeschooling and everything, Becky and Tina were totally different when it
Mhm.
came to homeschooling. Becky would just go crazy on the book. She'd run out of things, but she's actually homeschooling our grandchildren.
Mhm.
And Layla, I remember when she was homeschooling, and she would come up here and she could read at a very early age.
Mm.
But it's also it's the homeschooling, but it's also the child as well. And you see that spark. That child reads more books than I read,
Yeah.
and she's 9, and I'm like, I'm glad you have time. And I mean, it's not just books. Um, it's the audiobooks that they have
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
But they go and do all kinds of stuff too. I remember once when we were when we moved to Oregon, and I first was getting the girls into homeschooling and
Mhm.
stuff like that. They were young then; they were just now getting into school, and I ended up going back to work. But we had a babysitter that had her own homeschool, but she had run it like a private school.
Mhm.
So she had enough kids and everything, and they were working through PACES, the ACE stuff,
Mhm. We did that.
And there's different times, and I know you probably do, but some teachers nowadays, they have a bigger variety of things to homeschool,
Mm. Oh,
and
yes.
we're not saying that all public schools are
No.
bad, but it for a mom, your heart is to train up your child, like the Bible tells us to do in the Lord. But also it also talks about parents, the women teaching the children and
Mhm.
the other women. And also, you can enjoy it. It is a sacrifice, but it's a blessing as well. And I know some Christian teachers that are at public schools even, and we're going to have one on here later, and she's going to talk about how she has to be with the kids, of her church at her school, and so it's a little bit different, but just encouraging to keep it going. They've got different things, and when we went to Oregon, I'll never forget we were there probably not even 2 weeks maybe, and then the homeschool, the one that was their babysitter later, they had a homeschool op that was going to the Oregon Coast Aquarium, and we got to go and touch the sea urchins. We had a class downstairs. We got to do all of that and learn about all of the different things that were down there, the creatures and everything. And they also got to see Keiko the whale.
Oh.
And so it was really neat. And of course, I'm telling my age now. But it is really neat. And you find different things like that, different outlets. But, I mean, there were probably 20 kids that we had at that. So they can't say they're not socialized. I think that people have a misunderstanding and think homeschool means you're just in the house all the time.
Right, and no, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. And I had people say, well, you're not educated enough. You're not smart enough to do that. Well, I love my kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do the best that I can.
Right.
So I didn't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
If I didn't know it, we learned it together.
Right.
God
we figured
blesses
it out.
your
Heart with that, I think.
Yeah, we figured it out. So and then there were these two scriptures, and I'd like to share those that would that was always in my mind. And Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it."
Exactly.
And so that's not a suggestion; that's a command from the Lord. We're supposed to train up our children, and then in Deuteronomy 6:7 it says, "And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt talk about them when you sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest in the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." So that's pretty much all the time. Exactly. And really, that's what homeschooling is. It's an all time thing. It's not just 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever you did. And it doesn't have to be so structured. That's what my thing was when I first started. I had to just be like the public school, except doing it at home myself. It doesn't have to be like that, and there are so many wonderful curriculums now. There wasn't all of that when I got started.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of wonderful. So go out there and look and see what best fits you, because what was good and worked for me might not be what's good and worked for the next guy.
And it's the same for the kids. What works for one kid sometimes doesn't work for the other one.
Right.
I know with Tina, when she was a little bitty, she's gonna hurt me for this. She's a perfectionist, and I tried just the pre-K with her, and it was hard for her to associate mom as the teacher. And it was funny because, and of course, it's my first one to try on and everything, but we would try to do the alphabet just in pre-K. We're just going through it, making it fun. She'd get one mistake. She wouldn't do it the rest of the day, and I just laughed my head off. And she's totally different now. She's very smart, and but it just cracked me up. So I was like, "What am I doing wrong?" No, it's not that you're not doing wrong. It's just something new that you're introducing to your child.
And you don't know how to do it. It's like you didn't go to school, learn how to teach your kids.
Right.
It's an experience and a thing that we have to learn too. I remember Ethan, I didn't teach him how to read. He learned how to read over my shoulder when I was teaching Emily.
Isn't that funny?
His older sister.
Yeah.
And she struggled with a lot of things.
Yeah.
She had a little harder time, and Ethan would lean over and say, "Don't you know what that is?" Make her really mad.
The younger ones tend to do that, and it's really kind of funny because the older ones are like, "It's my turn to learn, leave me alone." Yeah, we've had that battle before.
Yeah.
Math was not my greatest subject.
No, I struggled with that too.
Yeah, but you do learn it. You get to relearn things, and they have different ways to learn things, but some of it's not. Some of the stuff that they are teaching in the public schools, I did not know. And for my girls, they when we came back here, we had a hard time. I was working. I wasn't homeschooling. At that time, they had already gone to a private school. And so they were in a private school setting that had like 3 grades in one room.
Mm-hmm.
And so Becky was used to turning around and helping the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And oh man, we're running out of time. But it's great to see how the difference is in the different where you're learning different things as well. But don't ever give up just because somebody is telling you you shouldn't. You pray about it and you ask God to help you with it, and God's going to give you that answer.
Yeah.
With like the math and all the other stuff that I had the problem with, because he helped us out with that. Because basically, if you think about it too, if they're going to public school and they come home and they bring homework home, you're homeschooling them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to teach them, help them out with that homework. So,
yeah. Well, if I could encourage anybody that's thinking about homeschooling, you got the internet, you got so much available to you. Avail yourself of that.
Yeah.
Get on there, research, look for curriculum. I mean, when you go to the grocery store and there's like 50 million of one product you have to choose from, well, you got a lot of choices to make.
Right.
Go in there, research, get involved. My daughter-in-law is involved in a co-op, and they do things with the kids all the time. Get into those things that help you.
Yeah.
And have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun. Love your kids and have fun.
If you're not having fun, your kids aren't going to have fun.
That's right.
And they're not going to learn. If you're uptight about the learning, they're going to be uptight about the learning.
Just relax and enjoy.
It's the same with Sunday school. If you're uptight about teaching your Sunday school class, your kids are going to be upset and uptight about the Sunday school class.
Yeah, so just relax and enjoy it. And dads, support your wives. Get in there and help if you can. Maybe you can help do a science experiment. Maybe you knew the better at the math and you can help with that part.
Exactly. Even my brother-in-law is an engineer, but he actually teaches at a private school the upper math. Mm-hmm. I would have no idea how to do that math. Mm-hmm. And so we would actually incorporate him, so you could bring your uncle in on it, anybody that can help.
Anybody that
it
wants to help.
It doesn't hurt, they can explain a little bit more. And even if the husband just allows the child to read to them. Mm-hmm.
That's that.
One, you're not just helping with the homeschooling, you're actually making that bond with your child.
You're building a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what the whole thing God wanted us to do.
Right.
Is be together and work together. And we can't do that if we're sending them off here and we're going over there and we never have time to communicate. God has given us a wonderful opportunity to bond and be together. Let's take advantage of that.
Exactly. We're going to end this segment right here, but me and Miss Jenny are going to come back for a part 2, and we're going to talk about Sunday school.
Okay.
So we'll talk to y'all later.
All
Thanks.
Right. Bye.